Okay, this is a Helios interview. I'm speaking with Robert Constorff of Facings. Rob, given your depth of experience, I think investors and Web3 founders will take an interest in this conversation. But let's start off in terms of actual potential customers for the project, right? So give us a high-level description of what Facings provides and who could make use of it.
Thanks, Gabriel. Appreciate you having me on and looking to provide some value to the listeners here. So Facings is building a no-code NFT lifecycle management platform. And essentially, it allows anyone who wants to manage a NFT collection and roll out sales campaigns and other events to use this tool in order to accomplish that. We're really focused on game studios at the moment as far as potential customers go. So we've been tailoring our feature roadmap according to the needs of indie studios building play-to-earn games. But essentially, this platform will allow you to upload your content, theme your collection, model campaigns, which are what we call instances of sales, drops, giveaways, and so on. And then accomplish all of the on-chain publishing of that without having to ever touch crypto.
Right, that's new detail to me. So you've mentioned there no code. Tell us about no code. And from the perspective of, if I'm a game studio, how you've just described things is high level. What do I need to know as a game studio that gives me confidence or interest in it, that this is relevant to me as a game studio?
Definitely. Thanks for the question. So game studios will find this useful, especially ones that don't currently have subject matter expertise in NFTs and in crypto. The game studios will likely leverage our full service API, which will allow you to accomplish all of the same things you can in the platform, but you can rig it into your own game or system. So you can trigger NFT events, you can accomplish all of the publishing your publishing needs through an API, and even build your own interface around our API. So we think the game studios will find that really useful. Some of the game specific use cases that we know are needed. They, want us to monitor data, often in a smart contract, aggregate that data, allow that data to be easily reported on, and then also hooked into in order to accomplish specific tasks, like minting a new NFT on demand or transferring an NFT into a specific target account, maybe the account of a player. So we're building an API that functions as the building blocks for games to compose higher level, richer experiences around NFTs and easily hook into the API in order to accomplish that. And another thing is traditional companies, a lot of them that aren't Web3 or crypto native, don't understand how to manage the accounting of crypto. So with our platform, they're able to pay to facilitate all of this with cash using their business bank account or whatever, and we'll handle the crypto and function as an abstraction layer over that complexity for them.
Okay, so let's break a couple of those things down. You mentioned NFT events. If I'm a game studio looking to explore NFT utility on my games, will I understand NFT events, or can you give us some color on that? And you also mentioned API, and you've mentioned no code. To me, those are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So how does it fit in that you've got API functionality and you've also got no code functionality?
Great question, thanks. So I'll address the first one. The gaming event triggers. So, this could be used for all kinds of NFT-based systems, and essentially you can think of it as automations or hooks that allow your app to accomplish some NFT thing through a known way, because a lot of developers are familiar with APIs and how to use them and how to integrate them. So that's really the idea here. We're handling the blockchain security as a custodian of the collection in Facing. So that's another element that the business doesn't need to be keen on, because we know how sharp the edges are in crypto. It's easy to screw up and mess up the security and have your account drained or have your game economy ruined because you've accidentally made, a simple mistake with securing a key or leaking it on accident or something like that. So the event triggers can be thought of automations around specific NFT functionalities. The game could trigger these through the API themselves, or they could define rules in our platform and will automatically trigger them when certain conditions are met. Now, to answer the question on the NoCode versus API side, our platform dashboard is actually implemented using our own API. So it's an example of what the API can do. And we're designing it in such a way that you can have full success without needing to be a dev or a crypto native person. And so it's really the first example of the API fully in use.
All right. There's surely a trade-off, right? If I'm a game studio, I'm looking to do NFT type things. Why not just go ahead and build it all myself, kind of thing? Or what is the trade-off that they actually have to consider between using Facings as a service versus in-house?
Yeah, great question. So really, it comes down to the resources they have and their timeline to go to market. So, and also their team composition. We know that Web3 devs and smart contract engineers are in high demand right now. So what you get leveraging a platform like Facings is a lot of the things that you would need a blockchain engineer to design out of the box through our service. This means you can go to market quicker theoretically because you'd have less work to do on your own as a company. And you can also have the assurance that we're continually focused on this core functionality. We're iterating, we're improving it. We're fully focused on that core. So you're going to also inherit benefits in the long term as we add additional features, as we maintain it. So it reduces the overall footprint that the game studio would need to manage and potentially saves the money by allowing them to bring their game to market quicker.
What kind of size game studio would this be relevant to? Surely you're charging, a tremendous amount of money for the privilege of using the service, but like, does a game studio already have to be established to a certain size with a certain revenue to be able to make use of what you're doing? Or does it reduce right down to it's a single developer building a new game project and they could make use of Facings?
Yeah, we really are suited to all shapes and sizes there. We are focused on the more small indie studios at the moment. They're more likely to take risks on a new platform. They're scrappy, looking at all of their potential options. We think we can provide them a good value. We'd love to work with larger game studios in the future as well. As our team expands and grows to support that, but also becomes validated through what we've built and brought to market. So once we have a few of these games really leveraging our core, we believe it'll be much easier to potentially attract that kind of customer. And really, it comes down at the moment to a more usage-based model. Now, we're toying around with the idea of selling some early access memberships before we hit open beta. So people who really want access to the platform are able to get in sooner and participate. And if you're interested, please do contact me. We're always happy to talk to folks who are looking to leverage this kind of tools. But the way it shakes out is you pay when you're ready to publish. So you can model your campaign in Facings, and only when you go through review and finalization do we actually charge your account. So in order to do that, we're using a platform credit system. So you can purchase credits, and those credits will correlate to a certain amount of publishing. The reason we need to do this credit abstraction is because we all know how volatile blockchain resources are. Sometimes the network's congested and costs to achieve things are higher. Sometimes in EOS and WAX, for instance, the RAM price is volatile and that's going up and down. So this credit system allows us to take in, some value. So you can pay in dollars. You have the static amount of credits, but the cost to publish will fluctuate on a daily basis, depending on the environment of the blockchain you're publishing to. And we see that in gas-based systems too, where the fees are dynamic based on how congested that blockchain is.
So I want to go into the modeling stuff a little bit more. You've already like I said, high level, we've gone into a lot of detail. You mentioned modeling. To me, that sounds like a product manager's and a marketer's and a CEO's kind of ideal situation to be able to model a launch using a new technology at the same time as not having to pay for it until it's actually implemented, integrated, and ready to launch, right? So give us more depth on what do you mean by modeling, and what are those kind of components or the stages of a modeling process for a game studio?
Sure, happy to go into detail. So in Facings, the sort of high level container that you manage is a collection. So when you get into the platform, you can add or import a collection based on if you already have a collection. If you add one, that will help you create a new one. And essentially, the collection is sort of like maybe if you've seen on Atomic Hub, for example, how each NFT has a collection associated to it. So it's a very similar idea. Now, the collection is where we believe a lot of the theming, the overall information about this particular set of NFTs goes, and the content. So you can have a creative on your team join the admin panel. You can invite them. They can upload creative work into the platform under that collection. And that's actually decoupled from the campaign launcher. Now, what you do when you launch a campaign, you choose the collection you want to launch a campaign for, and then you're able to choose a campaign type. Like I want to launch, a sale or a pack sale, or I want to do a burn event, or I want to do an auction, or so on. There will be many different types of campaigns, and we'll continue to add them over time as well. And so when you do that, we're able to present basically a wizard, a UI that you go through to configure that campaign. And that's where you can also pull in the content that you've defined in your collection and choose to launch it in that campaign in various ways, whether that's defining a pack and choosing, the odds structure, maybe using rarity to define those odds. That'll all be available later on in about midsummer. The first rollout will be a little bit more bare bones, but you'll still be able to facilitate an NFT sale through it. We're aiming for May on that launch. So long story short, while you're going in and making all of these changes, I want to add crafting. I want to have 200 different pieces of content in this launch sold through 3 different packs that are structured accordingly. We're able to use our billing engine essentially to estimate how much that would cost you on the fly. Now, we're not going to be able to perfectly predict that in the estimation, because while you're modeling, you might come back 3 days later, and then you want to launch in a week or two. And so the cost will still be dynamic due to the nature of blockchain resources. But we think this will give the publishers a good tool to estimate generally how much it's going to cost in order to achieve this. And those are, RAM costs, all of the costs associated with deploying the smart contracts, perhaps pre-minting NFTs, if that's part of your campaign design. Those costs are the ones being modeled. And then when we go to, enable that campaign, so essentially finalize it and actually publish it to the blockchain, there's actually one step before that. So you request a review from our team. We'll do an automated validation because we've launched a lot of NFTs and we know there's a lot of things that can go wrong. We'll also have a member of our customer success team review your launch manually to try to check any potential issues, because once we publish, we can't take it back. And after that point, after we have said, yes, this gets the green light, it's ready to go, then that is when the billing process starts, as well as publishing on chain. So that's when you'll have an idea of the real price. But there could still be volatility in between us saying go and the actual campaign being published, because it might take a few minutes. So we actually perform a reservation. We reserve above what's needed, but only charge you the actual cost plus our service fee. So that may sound a little complex, but the idea is to really make it easy for these publishers to understand how much it's going to cost to get done what they want to get done.
Got you. So they can actually speak with you or your team and put together, when you're saying modeling and the kind of, to me, it's like a launch sequence. You're actually looking at the financials involved in launching a different type of type of collection that may be bigger or smaller or more complex with different events happening, this kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So kind of let's transition over to talking more about business. We've defined game, like from the game studio perspective. If they're interested, where should they go to check out what you're doing and maybe speak to you?
Yeah, thank you. So at facings.io, we have an onboarding flow that you can fill out. So there's a red button on the front page that says launch NFTs. That'll walk you through our onboarding flow, which will give us enough information to get in touch with you and send you an invite to perhaps our alpha or our closed beta. Of course, you can also hit us in Discord. You can hit us in Telegram. There's various channels that you could speak one-on-one, and I'm usually happy to set up a call and learn about your needs. If not me, one of my team members will. So depending on your needs. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's never too early to start that ball rolling, correct? It's like, presumably these things can take months to bring to fruition.
Yeah, agreed. We think that great NFT launches do take months. There's a lot that goes into it, whether it's, making sure your content is aligned. There's a lot of textual content. So it's not only just media and art, but making sure all of that's there. If you're designing a game, you might need to have specific data in the NFTs that is used in your game. So you'll have to work backwards from your game design in order to really understand that. So that can take even longer too. So yeah, we're always happy to discuss with folks and learn about their needs too, so that we can get that feedback and potentially incorporate what we're learning into what we're building in the platform as well.
You mentioned having done a bunch of NFT projects in the past. Is that through Facings, or what is Facings at the stage now that launches can be done, or is that still pending on the summer? You've mentioned summertime features.
Yeah, so there's a big aspect of our platform, which is enabling sales. And last year, we built out a NFT experience, which is essentially a templated sales site, which enables collections to sell NFTs using credit cards as well as core tokens. In this case, this was on Wax. Enable crafting experiences, enable redemption experiences, view inventory, all of that. And so we built that out and iterated on it last year and really did a lot of the NFT launches more by hand as a consultancy. Through that process, we learned a lot about what it takes to launch a good NFT set or collection. And now we're incorporating that feedback into the publishing experience. So really, we've got the consumer or collector's experience on one hand, which is what we facilitated all of our launches last year through. And now we've got the publishing experience that we're finishing the build out and really focusing on now. They're kind of two separate components that are super critical to the whole facilitation of an NFT experience for your audience. And so in the platform, you can generate the sites for your NFTs. So you'll be able to generate a collection specific site. You can bring your own domain and we can embed that ability to leverage traditional payment methods as well. So now you can market to a less technical or non-crypto native audience, depending on your game or your brand, that may be most of your audience. And so, facilitating that usability is really at the core of what we're building. And a lot of that comes down to just, firsthand experience through the years, seeing that a lot of what holds our industry back is the usability needs to catch up. It needs to be smooth, easy, buttery, not charging tons of money to end users through fees and all of this. So we've really set that front and center in our minds so that we can really bring in more people than just serving the crypto audience. Of course, we want to serve the crypto audience too, and we think our tool will, but we want to also grow that community and ecosystem. So we think usability is the key.
So as on behalf of Helios, I'm receiving a lot of pitch decks, a lot of projects are about NFTs, right? And it's hard to, it almost gets to the point of thinking, oh, another NFT project. We all know that NFTs are key to the future, but I'm looking at the space and wondering how do projects differentiate themselves, which is part of the ecosystem, their community. If it's a game, then obviously it's relevant to the events in the game. What do you personally see as the growth trend of the NFT marketplace is really what I'm looking at. Why is this a good investable opportunity for investors? And why are Web3 founders flocking to the NFT kind of craze? Do you see what do you see as the struggles between competitors in the space? Give us some thoughts about your perception on the NFT market as a whole.
Sure, happily. So, NFTs have been around. I believe ERC 721 was defined in 2017. So it took a few years for that sort of interest to crescendo, and we really saw the virality of the NFT concept happen, starting last January, so January of 2021. And, at the end of the day, I think that it's a paradigm shift. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars in value in digital goods. Traditionally, these digital goods were on the servers of game companies or many other servers, but generally centralized companies' servers would track perhaps ownership of these goods. You wouldn't have property rights like you do with a tangible item you own in your hand. And this was problematic, especially around the game industry. So it was possible to have your account banned and all of that value you had in that account just sort of vanish away from your control. It could be thousands or tens of thousands of dollars or more. And if your account got banned, you just didn't have any rights anymore. So NFTs really facilitate that for gaming in a very natural way. And I think that we'll see that as a really immediate growth trend here in the market. Of course, there's all sorts of other amazing things you can do with NFTs. You can facilitate, a charitable cause through selling NFTs that may represent something personal. People buy them, they're basically getting a souvenir to support a cause. So you can do impact projects with NFTs. Artists can take back control of distribution through NFTs, especially NFTs that allow the purchaser or the person who owns them to redeem that NFT for something physical. So now we're disintermediating the marketplace of middlemen that sort of stand between traditional artists and the value that they're creating and sort of siphon it off. Of course, there's value in those middlemen depending on who they are, what they do, what the deal structure is. But traditionally, I mean, music is a great example of this. We know, artists are getting small fractions of a penny every time their song's streamed through a music platform. Can NFTs disintermediate that? I don't actually know, because streaming platforms are really convenient, but they're certainly a building block to trying. And depending on what kind of consumer you are, if you're an activist consumer, maybe you only want to spend your money on things. Maybe convenience isn't why you buy something, but rather it's because you like to put your money into things or causes or experiences that align with your values. Like when someone wants to buy their goods locally, they may choose to pay a high premium to do so. So it's really opening up a lot of choice there. And I really do think, though, gaming in the short term and physical logistics in the long term will be completely transformed by the NFT paradigm. And I'm sure there's all kinds of really interesting things we can do on top of this sort of substrate that we're building that we haven't even thought of yet. So, as far as the market goes, there's a lot of people speculating on NFTs. You always need to be careful about, that's a lot of risk. I mean, if you're paying a lot for one NFT, you should just really analyze that because it might be in a bubble. But that doesn't mean that the technology doesn't have merit and that it won't transform business models, that it won't create lots of value over the long term. And really, this is super aligned with the Web3 ethos, because to me, the Web3 ethos is about distribution of value in an equitable way to everyone who's a part of creating that value. And we know, in traditional capitalist structures, that's not always the case. In some cases, we might get a free service, but we're the product, if talking about the Googles of the world. And maybe that's an okay trade, but I think, especially with sort of the socioeconomic dynamics that we're faced with in the world, that Web3 could be, a curative or a part of the treatment of, creating more widely distributed value so more folks can have a higher quality of life. And, it could be a really windy path to get there, but that is something valuable. And I do think that a lot of value will be unlocked through traveling that path and seeing how we can build things that facilitate that, or, at the end of the day, create a more positive impact on the world, whether that's efficiency, which we know using NFTs as an on-demand sort of voucher for a physical good could improve the logistics industry and save tons of energy and money in the long run. Or, you know, a gamer who is maybe a teenager who spends, you know, 200 or 300 hours, you know, every quarter gaming. They're spending a lot of time in here. Now they can realize some value in a space that they're in a way that may have not been possible before, or harder, or they didn't have the same rights as with the MMO games that you can sell items in. And, you know, a reason I really believe in this, not just because I've, you know, been drinking the crypto Kool-Aid for 9 years, but one of my first entrepreneurial experiences was selling digital goods in EverQuest as a 14-year-old. I found these sites, you know, I had items, I was a hardcore player, I was in the best guild on the server, you know, we had to meet at specific times to play the game as a group. And I was totally mind blown when I realized I could sell my items for real money and someone would send money to my bank account when I was 14. So I was like, I felt that value transfer, and I understood intuitively back then that digital items can have value and people will pay for them. So this is a natural extension of that, that sort of phenomena, so to speak. And yeah, I really believe that no matter what, you know, this technology is here to stay, and I think it will improve, you know, that industry and the other ones that I'd mentioned, and perhaps many more. I mean, notarization, that's $1 trillion industry. And NFTs and digital signatures are part of a process by which we could notarize things digitally and disintermediate all of the paper pushing and waste of that industry as well. So there's big, you know, problems to potentially address using NFTs as one of the components to the solution. And that's why I think investors would be interested in the space.
We hear some news of teenage kids trading NFTs and making more money than their parents have done over the past decade of office work, let's say. I wouldn't say that that's being a Web3 startup founder, but what do you see, like maybe some general tips or suggestions, or how accessible? You mentioned 9 years of experience, and maybe you want to go into a little bit of your background, but how accessible are the opportunities that we're talking about? Notarization and supply chain logistics, and you know, all of the development stuff that has to go into being a Web3 startup. What are the opportunities that you see, or the challenges that people have to face?
Yeah, great question. So for the founders out there, well, stay tenacious. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Take care of your body and your mind, because if you go too fast and too hard, you might burn out and fall short before the end of the race. So I would caution folks, especially, you know, the first thing you said, Gabriel, people are making crazy sums of money relative to perhaps the effort required by circumstance of being early or being in the right project or timing their sale right. That's great. You know, if you have that opportunity and you want to found a company and you want to go after an idea, that might have just bought you some runway if you made the trade at the right time. But what I would caution, the cautionary tale of this is, when we start seeing all of that, it can cloud our vision, because we might think this is business as usual. It's going to be like this forever. But if you study market cycles, it could perhaps be a bubble. So you can't rely on those prices always being high or that demand always being there. So, I would also say that, especially through last year, it seemed very common for Web3 founders, myself included to some extent, to be like, what the heck's going on? There's so much money flying around, and start to get FOMO and start to have that FOMO actually influence your decisions as a founder. So you always want to make decisions, especially about strategy, with a cool head, with data, not with emotions. And it's the same as perhaps trading as well. So, tuning out some of that hype and FOMO can be really important to charting the course to what you really want to build, and the problems you're really trying to solve, addressing those, instead of accidentally getting detoured here and there because there's shiny things everywhere. But again, if you can make a few good trades, we call that hustling where I'm from, then perhaps that buys you 3 to 6 months of runway now, because you sold some NFTs and now you have more time to work on your idea. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you get in those spots, but just be careful not to have that totally cloud the vision of the thing you want to build, which may take longer, may take more refinement. It could be a 2-year process to really get to the right MVP, or multiple iterations after your MVP in that tuning process, and really get the language down that you're using to present this idea to people. So I guess that would be sort of some feedback there. It's a really exciting time to be a founder in the space. We see more mainstream legitimization, which is something that, even back in 2017, we were just starting to see happen. But before then, everyone thought you were crazy for being into Bitcoin, or what the heck is that? So, it's really good to see that. That's really helpful. And yeah, I'd say, as a Web3 founder, sometimes traditional resources can still be helpful too. So if you're starting a traditional startup company, leverage your local resources. If you have an entrepreneurial ecosystem, leverage things like the Helios incubator that Gabriel's running, and apply into that, so you can get some of that traditional startup creation experience of, how do we define our product? How do we talk about it? How do we design a business model? What's our go-to-market strategy? And all of these other pieces that you need to sort of lay out in order to convince investors that you're a smart team and a smart company to go with. And we've done that. We've leveraged all these local resources, and the thing is, they really want us as a crypto startup because we're able to teach them about our industry. So there's a benefit on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be some things.
Yeah, you were already well advanced in your business model, and before you joined the Helios Incubator program, you had the launch and product available last year, as you were explaining earlier. So there's different stages of progress that the projects come into the incubator. But what would you say what's made a difference for you, or what has changed in facings based on the incubator program as opposed to what you were doing last year?
Oh, well, Gabriel, I always remember the 3 words of wisdom that you share with us. It's a really pithy comment. Your investor pitch has to be achievable, believable, and concise. So get to the point, don't get stuck on the details. Make sure what you're presenting can withstand criticism, and actually harden it through criticism. Go pitch to 20 investors you don't necessarily care if they're in or not. Get that practice, see what these critical eyes impose when you're doing your pitch, and refine from there. And we've gotten a lot of that great feedback from yourself and through the incubator, as well as all of these other investors that we've eventually gotten in front of to pitch. You know, and I would also say that venture finance and angel investing and all of these aspects of fundraising are not natural, innate knowledge of people. You have to put forth an effort to conscientiously learn that. There's a really good book that I read that really changed my thinking and allowed me to start speaking to investors in their own language, Venture Deals. So I really recommend reading that book. And I mean, there's all kinds of great resources. Gabriel, you know, you're very good at this and sort of giving the perspective that an investor would bring before you're at the table with them as you're helping startups hone their pitch. And I think that's really helpful because you want to make sure it's gone through that scrutiny before you get in front of the big opportunity that you don't want to blow. Because you pretty much usually only get one chance with each investor. Good thing there's thousands of them. And that's the thing, it's just like a sales process. It's a numbers game. If someone says no, move on. You can be a little bit, you can persevere a little bit, but that's fine because it's a game of numbers. If you do 100, 200, 300 pitches, you're going to be in a lot better place. You're going to have that refinement. And you're probably going to find partners who want to work with you at that point. If you've only done 5 of them, well, you may not have all the refinement you need yet. And, you know, it's the same as a salesperson or a sales process. You know, maybe they got lucky in the first 5, or maybe they were just learning how to sell the product in their first 5 and they didn't close any deals. But those numbers and that quantity of interaction matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time that you and I went through your deck, and I was very impressed with the business model. And I was instantly seeing that we're over communicating the amount of detail in the deck, so that even though a project can be excellent, the team can be excellent, there is, it's like, it's difficult really to convey succinctly, but there is a way of describing, communicating an investable pitch to investors. And you're like 100%, it's not intuitive. And so I could see the potential, and now the pitch decks from before, based on what you learned, what you're going through in the incubator program, with the feedback from the people in the group and the other conversations that I know you're having with other investors, the difference in your pitch deck is like light and day, right? It's super different. It's still the same business. It's still essentially the same product, the same thing, the same team, but it's just a completely different way of communicating that across to investors. It really is a very interesting experience for me running the incubator program to see projects come in and you know, they may actually communicate it simpler and more clearly, but you can see that it's not such a great project, right? And then a lot of them are like good projects, but hey, let's work on the presentation.
Yeah, and also night and day between the first time I pitched you and more recently is my confidence, because you have to get that practice time in and you have to be excited, sell the thing, let people see your passion. But one of the other best, like, short, pithy pieces of wisdom I got from a local group, SBDC, they said, it's not a product pitch, it's an investor pitch. Because a lot of us folks that build products or are building a startup just want to focus on the details of the product. But really, it's more like the same function as a resume. The resume is just to get your foot in the door so you can have the interview. If you put too much detail on the resume, they'll throw it in the bin because they can't parse it all. So they get overwhelmed with an overly detailed resume. It's the same idea with investor pitches. Spend a few minutes. Here's the problem. Here's a story. Here's a hook. Here's our problem. Here's our solution. Here's how it works. And now let's talk about the business details for the rest of this 7 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. So you got to have that restraint to say, all right, I'm biting my tongue now. I'm just trying to hook these investors, and we'll have hours and hours to discuss about the details later and go into depth on the product.
Yeah, one of the key points I make along those lines is that not to technology founders, they're so in love with their technology. Technology is not a product, and rather than fall in love with your solution, your technology, fall in love with the customer's problem, because that then helps you to find the story that is communicable to investors. So yes, those details, they're like pearls of wisdom, well described.
So true, yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you can relate about facings, anything else, or should we wrap up for now? And I'd love to be able to do this kind of conversation again in the near term future for an update.
Always happy to come on for an update. I guess the big pieces are, we're looking for senior engineering talent. So if you're interested in working on the Facings team and building, the sort of NFT publishing product that we're working on, looking for a senior backend engineer, senior front-end engineer, potentially blockchain engineer as well. So happy to, talk further for folks that are interested. We're an international team, so no need to worry about physical location, and look out for an exciting summer from us. Sign up for our mailing list if you haven't yet. You can do that on facings.io as well. We'll be rolling out updates. We've really just been heads down, making sure that this first launch has all the pieces in place, but we're really excited to get this out there and help the ecosystem flourish and help publishers build their businesses or aspects of it on top of our business. So I think that's it for now, Gabriel. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll leave it there, facings.io. And for any founders interested in the incubator program, heliosrising.com, and you'll find us. Rob, pleasure. Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, good day.